let us talk about the next intracellular fluid that is called as blood. Now, blood, as we have discussed, we have two types of fluids. One is blood and one is lymph. So, blood is a extracellular connective tissue. Basically, it is red colored, it is opaque, and it is slightly alkaline fluid. Okay, and the study of blood is called hematology, and it is that fluid tissue that circulates through various parts of the body through cardiovascular system. As we have already discussed, circulatory system, if it is associated with blood, we call it as the cardiovascular system, and if it is associated with the lymph, we call it as the lymphatic system, right? So that's our blood, and it is composed of, what is blood composed of? Plasma, formed elements or blood cells, RBC, WBC, and platelets. Okay, so in fact the entire matrix of the blood, it is made up of this plasma. So plasma is called as the extracellular liquid matrix. It is the extracellular liquid matrix in which the various cells are there. See, blood is actually called as a tissue. It is a liquid connective tissue. It is a connective tissue because there are multiple type of cells that are present in the blood. What are those multiple type of cells? As we have said, they are your RBC, WBC, platelets, then there are other cells, formed cells. So all of them are the multiple type of cells. So different type of cells in one common matrix, and that common matrix is plasma. In fact, if I just make a percentage difference, then 55% of the blood is made up of the plasma, and these cells make up to the rest of the 45%. Okay, right? So if I have to talk about it, then that is the way we can talk about it. Okay, now as we have said, plasma contributes to 55% and the other cells contribute to the 45% of the total volume of the blood. Now, total volume of the blood in an adult human being is said to be 5 to 6 liters. Now, when you go to, okay, right, and the percentage of total volume of occupied by the RBCs is called as hematocrit or packed volume. Now, what is this hematocrit? What is this? Let me show it to you using a diagram. Now, what I'll do is I'll just take a tube. I'll let me say I'm a pathologist. Okay, so what I've done as a pathologist is I'm going to draw blood from an individual, and I'm going to collect it in a tube. So this is my test tube, and in this test tube what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it with blood. I'm going to completely fill it with blood. Okay, let me just fill it with blood. So this is blood. Okay, now so I'm just going to completely fill it with the blood. This is the blood that has been drawn or taken from the individual. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, this is whole blood. Okay, this is called as whole blood. This is called as whole blood. Whole blood. Now this whole blood, in fact, it contains what? It contains two things. It contains the blood plasma in about 55%, and it also contains the cells or the formed elements, as we call the formed elements, in the other 45%. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this blood and I'm going to centrifuge it against gravity in a centrifugal motion, and I'm going to see what happens. So let us centrifuge it. So when I centrifuge it, I got something like this. I've got 3 different layers. Okay, so this layer with this dark red coloration, this layer, this is called just the RBC. Okay, then you see this middle layer here, this layer here, I'm going to just highlight it with a pen. This buffy coat, this is actually composed of WBC and platelets. This is composed of WBC and platelets, and this whole thing, it is called as the plasma. Okay. Okay, now the plasma, if I have to write it, the composition of plasma, plasma contains almost 90 to 92% of water. 90 to 92% of water, and the rest 6 to 8% are proteins. There are a lot of proteins that are present in the plasma, which we will see when we discuss plasma in detail. Okay, the formed elements or the cells that we have seen, you have the WBC, the platelets, you have the RBC, and in the WBC you have many other forms of cells, like you have neutrophils, okay, eosinophils, basophils, okay, and then you have the monocytes and lymphocytes, Okay, so this is the composition of WBC, the composition of plasma, and obviously the entire RBC section, is just made up of RBC, right? So this RBC, this packed RBC, this packed volume of RBC, it is given a name. The name that is given to it is hematocrit. What is it called? It is called hematocrit. Okay, so hematocrit is nothing but the total amount of RBC divided by the total volume of the blood. Total amount of RBC divided by total volume of the blood is called as hematocrit. Now, the size or the volume of the RBC, it keeps on volume of RBC, if it is increased, if you have a greater volume or a higher volume of RBC, then it is called a condition, higher, more than normal, increased RBC or increased hematocrit, then you can have a condition called polycythemia. And if your RBC levels are decreased than normal, then you are having a condition called anemia. Okay, and you will also, and if they are even furthermore decrease, it is called as erythrocytopenia also, that we will go into later, right? So this is plasma, hematocrit, WBC and platelets. So now let us see each and every component of it, and before we go into it, let us understand the general characters of the blood. So we are going to understand the characteristics of blood, the characteristics or some general characters of blood before we go and understand each and every component in detail. So let us start with the first one, that is the temperature of the blood. The temperature, the average temperature of blood is 38 degrees centigrade, okay, which is 1 degree higher. Always remember, in fact it varies. What is a normal body temperature? It is 37 degrees centigrade, right? So your blood temperature will always be 1 degree higher than the temperature which is oral or rectal. See, when you want to see your body temperature, you put the thermometer in your mouth. Of course, these days they're taking the forehead temperature, but oral temperature or the rectal temperature gives the overall idea of the body temperatures, right? So blood temperature will always be 1 degree more than the oral or rectal one. The second point is the pH of the blood. pH of the blood is slightly alkaline, which is ranging from 7.5 to 7.45, 7.35 to 7.45, and mostly this is due to the composition of the plasma that we will see later. So this is almost near the neutral. See, what is neutral pH? Neutral pH is 7. Neutral pH is 7. Correct. So this is a little few decimals above neutral. So this is not completely alkaline but slightly alkaline in nature. And we will understand why that is when you see the composition of the plasma. Next, the third point is uh, an average individual, as we have discussed, an average female has 4 to 5 liters of blood and an average male has 5 to 6 liters of the blood. So this is the composition of the blood with respect to the gender differences, the total volume of the blood. And the blood pressure and the osmotic pressure, they are controlled by multiple hormones like aldosterone, sorry for that, yeah, like aldosterone, okay, ADH, ANF, okay, all of these are various hormones that control the viscosity, the blood pressure and the volume of the blood. Right, so let us go now into the components of the blood and let us start with the plasma. So as we have discussed, plasma is called as the fluid matrix of the blood and the extracellular matrix of the blood, and we know that it constitutes of 92% water and 8% of other solutes. Right. So what are those solutes? What are present in the plasma? They are plasma proteins, mineral salts, various nutrients, gases. What are the gases here we are talking about? The gases we are talking about is oxygen and carbon dioxide, excretory waste products, okay, enzymes, hormones, etc. And in the plasma proteins, already they've repeated, but in the plasma proteins specifically, we are going to talk about albumins, globulins. There will also be fibrinogen. Okay, so in fact, both of them together, they come under the plasma proteins, fibrinogen and prothrombin. In fact, albumin, it is it ranges for 54%. The biggest the largest amount of proteins that is present in the blood is albumin. Followed by albumin, you have 38% of globulins. Then you have 7% of fibrinogen, and prothrombin and other proteins, they form the 1%. Okay, so and they're all produced by the liver and they enter the blood. So first we will see globulins. So globulins are formed by the liver and the lymphoid organs, and these are three types of globulins. You will see the alpha globulins, the beta globulins, the gamma globulins. So you have three types of globulins, and these gamma globulins are the antibodies and are also called as the immunoglobulins. So we know that alpha globulin and beta globulin, where do you see that? You'll see them even in the structural component of blood, but gamma globulins they are mostly associated with production of antibodies, and hence they are called as immunoglobulins. So these are the few immunoglobulins. Next is albumin. Albumin are the most smallest and most abundant serum or plasma proteins. Serum and plasma. Reason is, even you can say lymph proteins, interstitial fluid proteins. Instead of lymph, you can use the word interstitial fluid, because these are so small that they can come out of the blood and join the interstitial fluid also. They are present in the plasma, and when the blood clots, what you have, the fluid matrix, is called as the serum. So the serum also contains albumin. It is the smallest ones, and the main role is they maintain the colloidal osmotic pressure of the blood. If albumin level falls in the blood, it results in edema. Why that happens? See, normally if you want to understand this, it's very simple. If the albumin levels of the blood fall, then the osmotic pressure is varying. That means the blood becomes more thinner. It will have more of the fluid and less of the solute, right? So as a result, the extra fluid, it gushes out of the capillary. See, you want a a particular volume of blood. If the blood has less solutes and more fluid, what it feels, Are Baba, it is more thinner. So it will gush that extra fluid out, and all that extra fluid goes deposits into the interstitial in the form of interstitial fluid. It will deposit in the near the tissues, and it results in the accumulation of fluid in the tissues. So this is due to the interstitial fluid, whatever extra water, excess drainage of the interstitial fluid. Next, the plasma proteins acts as acid-base buffers and maintain the pH of the blood at 7.4. In fact, we have seen it is 7.3 to 5 to 7.45. And I've told you that this slight alkalinity is due to the some composition of the blood. So what are this? Blood contains chlorides, bicarbonates, sulfates and phosphates of sodium, potassium, calcium and magnesium. So you are having various chlorides, salts of sodium, potassium, calcium and magnesium, and they give blood that characteristic feature, the characteristic pH of 7.35 to 7.45. If the pH of the blood decreases beyond 7.35, that condition is called acidosis. This is formed when there is a liver failure or kidney failures. You will see that condition. And if it goes beyond 7, death. That means your blood should see such a tiny difference. Beyond, if it is anything less than 7.35, it is acidosis. And how much you are having? Only 0.35 difference. Beyond anything less than 7, it is death. Okay, and similarly, if anything is more than 0.4, 7.45, we call it as alkalosis, but this is a little better. At least it is staying till almost 7.4, so that this is also almost that 0.35 difference, and anything beyond 7.8 to 9, it is again death. So the normal range, the acidosis and the alkalosis, this is the plasma. Next, we are going to talk about the elements. So these are all the various elements or formed elements or cells that are present in our RBC. Now these formed elements, they are RBC, WBC, again which contains lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, basophils, neutrophils and platelets. Now all of them, they are generated or they are developed in the bone marrow, and the process by which they are produced, it is called as hemopoiesis or hematopoiesis. Hemopoiesis or hematopoiesis. So it is nothing but the process of making these formed elements, making RBC, WBC and platelets in the bone marrow, that is called as hemopoiesis or hematopoiesis, mainly occurs in the bone marrow. In lymphatic organs such as spleen, in fact it happens in the spleen till the 5th month of gestation. Spleen acts as a hematopoietic organ. Right, so even in the the lymphocytes, this lymphocytes, they are mostly formed, these lymphocytes here, they are also formed in the lymph organs. They are formed in the lymph organs like spleen. Okay, it is also formed in the thymus. Thymus. It is formed even in the lymph nodes. Other than bone marrow, they are formed there, but the rest of them, they are all formed in the bone marrow. In fact, WBC cells are also called as leukocytes, and excess of them is called as leukemia. Okay, now let us see them. The formed elements are erythrocytes or RBC, leukocytes or WBC, platelets, and these are the different type of WBCs. And the process is called as hematopoiesis. In the early stages of the embryogenesis, blood cells are formed in the yolk sac. Later, liver and spleen take over, which is temporary. First, it is yolk sac. Then till the 5th month of gestation, liver and spleen will take over. But later on, in the final stages of gestation, that is from the 6th month of gestation to your whole life, it is the red part of the bone marrow that is going to be taking place. Right, now RBCs are erythrocytes. They are circular, elliptical in camels and llamas. This is an example that you need to remember. Biconcave and enucleate. Always remember, RBCs are enucleated. Okay, so the biconcave is to provide large volume ratio so that there is more area for the exchange of gas, and they are 7.8 micrometers in diameter. So this is how it looks. It's a biconcave structure, right? So this is the RBC looks when in the circular top view, and if you look at it in the sideways, this is how it looks, that biconcave structure. Okay, you can see this biconcave structure. Now, the number of RBCs per cubic millimeter in 1 cube of a millimeter, it is 5 million in man, 4.5 million in humans. And erythrocytopenia is the decrease of number of erythrocytes, or which leads to anemia, which we have just discussed about when we were talking about the total volume of RBC. So if your total volume of RBC decreases, it is called as anemia, and if it increases, it is a condition called as polycythemia. Next, if short, all RBC is very important because it carries the oxygen. It is the carrier of oxygen. If there is a shortage of oxygen, then what it does, normally the brain, it stimulates the kidneys to secrete an hormone called erythropoietin. Why? Because brain thinks you're having shortage because of decreased number of RBC. RBCs are the one that carry oxygen, right? So if the body is not receiving oxygen, the brain will think, maybe the RBCs are not enough. That's why the body is having this. So it tells the kidneys, please produce erythropoietin. This erythropoietin goes to the bone marrows and it produces the production of RBC. Okay, then production is one concept. These are immature RBCs. The RBCs which are produced, they are immature RBCs. Then with the help of vitamin B12 and folic acid, they mature into mature RBCs. Okay, and once the mature RBCs are there, they are left into the blood system where they pick up oxygen and try to increase the blood oxygen levels. Okay, now mammalian RBCs, they are always surrounded by a plasma membrane. Okay, and nucleus and other cells are lost in the reticuloid stage. Reticuloid stage is nothing but it is the immature stage of RBC. In fact, when the cells are formed, they have nucleus, they have other cell organelles in the immature stage, but when they become into that matured stage, they lose the nucleus and they also lose the other cell organelles. And the cytoplasm contains the protein which is called as hemoglobin, and you know the structure of hemoglobin. It is made up of polypeptide chains, 2 alpha, 2 beta. Every chain contains an iron in the center, and to this iron only the oxygen molecules bind to. Okay, and each one is called as a pyrrolic ring. So this is a tetrapyrrolic ring, and this head is called as a porphyrin head. Porphyrin head. Okay, so 2 alpha and 2 beta. Now, lifespan of RBC in humans is 120 days. The worn out RBCs are destroyed in the spleen and liver. Okay, and let us see some questions. The study of blood is called oncology, hematology, nephrology, myology. It is hematology. Next, blood clot without blood cells is called, blood without blood cells is called plasma, fluid tissue, albumin matrix, plasma. An abnormal rise in RBC is called erythrocytopenia, polycythemia, anemia, erythropoiesis.
For more content, like, share and subscribe to www.i-win.in.